My husband thought he was smarter than me, until I showed him my chess moves. The first sign something was wrong appeared in our joint account on a Tuesday afternoon. A curious transfer of $5,000 to an entity listed only as BR Consulting. I stared at the transaction on my laptop screen, brow furrowed. Josh and I maintained meticulous records of our finances, a habit from our early marriage when money was tight and every dollar mattered. Now, with Josh's corporate law career in full bloom and my business interests on pause while I raised our children, we were comfortable but still careful. Unplanned expenditures of this size were unusual, especially without discussion. When I texted Josh about it, his response came quickly. Investment opportunity through work. We'll explain tonight. That evening, he swept into our suburban home with his usual confidence, loosening his Italian silk tie as he kissed the top of my head. I was at the kitchen island, helping our 8-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, with their science projects. "Daddy," they chorused, abandoning their papier-mâché volcanoes to launch themselves at him. Josh scooped them up with practiced ease, kissing each on the cheek before setting them down. "Keep working on those volcanoes, scientists. I need to talk business with Mom for a minute." His explanation about BR Consulting sounded reasonable enough, a startup incubator run by a former colleague, offering early investment opportunities in promising tech ventures. The exclusivity, he emphasized, required quick action, thus the uncharacteristic lack of discussion. I nodded, filing away the information while noting the subtle tells I'd learned to read during our 12 years of marriage, the slight shift in his gaze, the unnecessary detail in the explanation, the faint drumming of his fingers against his thigh. Josh was lying. Most wives might have confronted him immediately, demanded answers, or started an argument. But I'm not most wives. Before becoming just a mom, as Josh had increasingly begun to refer to me at his firm functions, I had built hindsight analytics from a dorm room idea to a $40 million predictive analysis company. I hadn't actually stepped away from operations as completely as Josh believed. I still quietly served as board chairperson and strategic advisor, working remotely while maintaining the fiction that I had fully embraced domestic life at his insistence. My business success was built on recognizing patterns, analyzing data, and strategic patience, so rather than confronting Josh, I simply smiled and asked questions that sounded supportive while revealing nothing of my suspicions. That night, after Josh fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and began my investigation. The first step was simple enough. I logged into our complete financial records, tracking recent changes in spending patterns. Small withdrawals from the ATM near Josh's office had increased in frequency. Charges appeared at restaurants I didn't recognize on days Josh claimed to be working late. A hotel charge disguised as a business expense, but lacking the corresponding travel records I would expect from legitimate work trips. Subtle changes, but to my trained eye, they formed a pattern as clear as constellations on a dark night. The next morning, after Josh left for work and the twins departed for school, I turned my attention to BR Consulting. A standard search revealed nothing, which was itself telling. Legitimate investment opportunities leave digital footprints. This one existed only as a name on a bank transaction. I activated a set of research tools I hadn't used since my active days running hindsight analytics. Within hours, I had traced the account to a recently established LLC registered in Nevada, a state known for its corporate privacy protections. The beneficial owner wasn't listed, but the registration attorney was one Philip Dawes, whose client list included several partners from Josh's law firm. The pieces were there, but the picture remained incomplete. That evening, I casually mentioned I'd schedule our annual couples massage at Josh's favorite spa for the weekend, a suggestion he quickly deflected. "Can't this weekend. Loose. That big Westcott merger is heating up. I'll be at the office both days." I smiled with understanding, while mentally noting another data point the Westcott merger had concluded 2 weeks earlier. I'd seen the announcement in the business press I still followed religiously, despite Josh's assumption that my reading had devolved to parenting magazines. "Of course, darling, work has to come first." The next day, after dropping the twins at their soccer practice, I drove past Josh's office building on a hunch. His assigned parking spot in the underground garage sat empty, his distinctive black Audi nowhere to be seen. I circled the block twice to confirm before driving home, my mind racing with implications but still seeking definitive evidence. That evidence arrived 3 days later in the form of a misdirected email. Josh had been using our shared family iPad and apparently forgot to log out of his personal account. The notification banner appeared while I was checking the weather, from Bianca Ramos. Subject: weekend plans and property thoughts. I hesitated only briefly before opening it. After all, if I was wrong about my suspicions, I'd simply be reading an innocent email that would dispel my concerns. The alternative that I was right justified the invasion of privacy. The message left no room for charitable interpretation. Josh Darling. The Sedona house is perfect, private, secluded, and exactly what we need once everything is finalized. The realtor can get us in at asking price if we move quickly. Once your divorce filing is complete and the dust settles, we can begin transferring assets. My attorney confirms that with the documentation you've provided about Lucy's domestic role, we should have no trouble establishing your right to the majority of marital assets given your role as primary breadwinner. Can't wait for our weekend away. The hotel confirmed our usual suite is ready. All my love. Attached were photos of a stunning modernist house perched on Sedona's distinctive red rocks. A property I recognized from a real estate listing Josh had quickly closed on his laptop when I'd entered his home office last month. I sat at the kitchen island, the iPad before me, feeling a curious sense of calm. There was no shock, no tears, just a cold clarity. Josh wasn't just having an affair, he was planning to leave me and take everything we'd built together. He and his lover had been strategizing, preparing documentation, building a case to strip me of financial security. What Josh didn't know, what he had never bothered to fully understand, was exactly who he was dealing with. I carefully logged out of Josh's email, erased the notification, and set the iPad exactly where I'd found it. Then I walked to my closet, pushed aside my carefully curated suburban mom wardrobe, and entered the combination to the hidden safe Josh had no idea existed. Inside was a secure laptop, untraceable to our home network, that I used for my continued involvement with Hindsight Analytics. It was time to play chess, not checkers, and despite what my husband thought, I had always been the better strategist. For the next 2 weeks, I maintained the perfect facade of domestic bliss. I prepared Josh's favorite meals, listened attentively to his fabricated work stories, and never once indicated I knew about Bianca Ramos or the elaborate plan they had constructed. Meanwhile, I was methodically preparing my counteroffensive. The first call went to Victoria Chen, my college roommate and now one of Boston's most formidable divorce attorneys. She listened without interruption as I outlined what I knew and what I suspected. "He's underestimated you badly," she said when I finished, "which gives us a significant advantage. Don't confront him yet. Let me put some protective measures in place first." The second call was to Marcus Diaz, the CEO who had been running the day-to-day operations of Hindsight Analytics during my sabbatical. "Lucy, what perfect timing," he greeted me. "I was about to reach out. The Ashworth acquisition is progressing faster than expected. We should discuss the terms before the board meeting next week." "Actually, Marcus, we need to accelerate some other matters as well," I replied. "How quickly can you implement the contingency plan we discussed when I stepped back from active management?" There was a brief pause. "The hostile takeover protocol, are you certain that's necessary?" "I am, and Marcus, complete confidentiality on this one. Not even the board should know yet." "Understood, consider it done." My third call was to a private investigation firm I had used for corporate background checks during Hindsight Analytics' growth phase. I authorized a comprehensive investigation into Bianca Ramos and her connection to Josh, with particular attention to any financial entanglements. With these wheels in motion, I turned my attention to securing evidence. I methodically documented every unusual financial transaction, copied key emails, and photographed relevant documents from Josh's home office during his working weekends. Most crucially, I recovered our original prenuptial agreement from our safe deposit box. The agreement Josh had apparently forgotten specified that any business interests or intellectual property I owned prior to our marriage remained exclusively mine. Hindsight Analytics had been founded 2 years before I met Josh. Its current valuation exceeded $150 million. I also began transferring small amounts of my personal savings money I'd kept separate from our joint accounts to a new account Victoria had established for me. Not enough to trigger suspicion, but sufficient to ensure I wouldn't be financially vulnerable when the confrontation came. Throughout these preparations, I maintained my role as devoted wife and mother with Academy Award-worthy precision. I chatted amicably with Josh's colleagues at a firm dinner, pretending not to notice how his new associate, a striking woman with a Spanish accent, avoided eye contact with me. I organized a surprise birthday celebration for Josh's father, coordinated the twins' school activities, and even initiated sex with Josh on nights when the thought didn't entirely repulse me. The performance was exhausting but necessary. Every day, Josh continued to believe I was oblivious, gave me another day to strengthen my position. The private investigators delivered their report on Bianca Ramos 10 days after I engaged them. She was indeed Josh's associate at the firm hired 8 months earlier after relocating from Miami. Their affair had begun almost immediately, conducted primarily at a boutique hotel where Josh had secured a standing reservation under the name James Reynolds. More concerning were the financial connections. Josh had been helping Bianca establish a series of LLCs designed to hold assets, including the Sedona property and a recently purchased yacht titled to BR Marine Adventures. Most damning was evidence that Josh had been systematically transferring funds from our joint accounts through a complex network of transactions designed to obscure their ultimate destination accounts controlled by Bianca. Armed with this information, Victoria accelerated our preparations. "We're ready whenever you are," she assured me. "The documentation is airtight, the financial protections are in place, and we can file for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct the moment you give the word." I decided to wait exactly 1 more week until after the twins' school play. They had been rehearsing for months, and I wouldn't let Josh's betrayal taint their moment of triumph as the sun and moon in their class production. The universe, however, had different timing in mind. 2 days before the play, I received an urgent call from Marcus. "Lucy, we have a situation. Someone's attempting to force a board vote to remove you as chairperson. They're claiming your extended absence constitutes abandonment of fiduciary responsibility." I felt my blood run cold. "On what grounds?" "They've submitted documentation supposedly showing you've formally withdrawn from all business activities to become," and I quote, "a full-time homemaker with no ongoing professional engagements." "Who's behind this?" Marcus hesitated. "The motion was introduced by Philip Dawes, representing a new minority shareholder who recently acquired stock through a private transaction. The same attorney who had established Bianca's LLCs." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Josh wasn't just planning to divorce me, he was attempting to seize control of my company first. "Call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning," I instructed. "In person, not virtual, and Marcus, make sure the security team understands that under no circumstances is anyone to be admitted without proper credentials and my explicit approval." The confrontation had been forced earlier than I'd planned, but perhaps that was for the best. After ending the call with Marcus, I texted Josh, "Emergency with the twins' school project. Need to discuss when you get home." His reply came swiftly, "Running late, don't wait up." I smiled grimly at the predictable response and began making final preparations. First, I called my parents and arranged for them to take the twins for a few days, citing a surprise anniversary trip Josh had planned. Then I gathered the documentation I had assembled over the past weeks, organized it meticulously in a portfolio, and placed it on the kitchen island where it would be immediately visible. Finally, I changed out of my carefully selected homemaker wardrobe of yoga pants and oversized sweaters, and dressed in what the twins called my boss lady outfit, a tailored charcoal suit, subtle makeup, and the sapphire earrings I'd bought myself when Hindsight Analytics secured its first $1 million client. When Josh finally arrived home at 11:40 p.m., I was sitting at the kitchen island, a single glass of Macallan 18, his preferred scotch, untouched before me. "Lucy." He froze in the doorway, clearly startled by both my appearance and my presence. "What are you doing up? Where are the kids?" They're with my parents, I replied calmly. I thought we needed privacy for this conversation. His eyes darted to the portfolio on the counter, then back to me, with remarkable composure. He loosened his tie and attempted a confused smile. What conversation is something wrong? I pushed the glass of scotch toward him. You'll want this. He approached cautiously, like a man walking onto thin ice. You're scaring me. Luce, what's going on? I think you know exactly what's going on. Josh. Or should I call you James Reynolds? That is the name you use at the Lombardy Hotel, isn't it? His face registered shock for only a moment before settling into the smooth, controlled expression I recognized from watching him prepare for tough negotiations. He picked up the scotch and took a deliberate sip. I see, he said finally, you've been spying on me. Investigating, I corrected. After discovering unauthorized transfers from our joint accounts to BR Consulting, that would be Bianca Ramos. Correct your associate and co-conspirator in what appears to be an elaborate plan to defraud me of my company and our marital assets. Josh set down the glass, his lawyer persona fully engaged now. That's a serious allegation, Lucy, one I'd be careful about making without evidence. I opened the portfolio and began laying out documents methodically, bank statements showing the transfers, photos of the Sedona property, emails between Josh and Bianca discussing their strategy, hotel receipts, the private investigator's report documenting their meetings. Is this sufficient evidence? Or would you like me to continue? I asked pleasantly. I'm particularly interested in discussing the board maneuver you attempted to orchestrate through Philip Dawes. That was clever. I'll admit trying to remove me as chairperson before filing for divorce. It would have made hindsight analytics much more vulnerable during our settlement negotiations. For the first time, I saw genuine alarm in Josh's expression. He hadn't expected this level of preparation from the woman he'd increasingly treated as an intellectual inferior. You're overreacting, he tried, adopting a patronizing tone. Some of these business arrangements are complicated. You've been out of the professional world for years. Lucy. It's understandable that you'd misinterpret. Stop. I raised a hand. We both know I'm not misinterpreting anything. You're having an affair with Bianca Ramos. You've been systematically transferring our joint assets to accounts she controls, and you're planning to divorce me while simultaneously attempting a hostile takeover of my company. Josh abandoned pretense, his expression hardening. Fine, yes, it's over, Lucy, it has been for a long time. You chose to become a glorified babysitter while I continued building my career. Bianca understands ambition, drive qualities you abandoned. I laughed, the sound clearly unsettling him. Is that what you think happened, that I abandoned ambition to become a glorified babysitter? It's what happened, he insisted. You walked away from your company to make lunchboxes and attend PTA meetings, every dinner party, every conversation. All you talk about are the twins and their activities. The Lucy I married was brilliant, driven. That woman disappeared. No, I corrected quietly. That woman just became invisible to you. I never stopped being chairperson of Hindsight Analytics. Josh, I never stopped directing strategy or participating in major decisions. I simply did it remotely, during school hours, while honoring your request that I focus more on family. His expression shifted from confidence to confusion. That's not possible. I would have known. Would you? When was the last time you asked me about anything beyond meal plans and the twins' schedules? When did you last express interest in my intellectual life or professional thoughts? I leaned forward. You created the narrative that I had surrendered my identity to motherhood because it suited your evolving perspective. It made it easier to justify your affair and your plan to discard me. Josh's legal mind was clearly racing, reassessing the situation based on this new information. Even if what you're saying is true, the prenup protects my ownership of Hindsight Analytics completely, I finished for him. As you'd know if you'd bothered to review it before attempting your little corporate coup. His face flushed with anger. You've been lying to me for years about your involvement with the company. No, I've been respecting your wish that I appear to be just a mom while managing my professional responsibilities privately. There's a difference. I gathered the documents back into the portfolio, but that's all irrelevant now. What matters is what happens next. Josh's expression shifted to calculation, the look I'd seen when he sensed an advantage in negotiations. And what exactly do you expect to happen? Lucy, you expose the affair, file for divorce, we fight over assets. Consider how that affects the twins. Consider your reputation when people learn you've been secretly working while pretending to be a devoted full-time mother. I smiled, genuinely amused by his clumsy attempt at leverage. Is that your strategy, to shame me for effectively managing both professional responsibilities and motherhood, to threaten me with public exposure of my competence? His confidence faltered visibly. I'm simply pointing out that messy divorce proceedings rarely benefit anyone. Oh, I agree completely, I said, standing up. Which is why I've already prepared a settlement agreement that allows us both to move forward with dignity. I withdrew the final document from my portfolio and placed it before him. Josh scanned it, his expression darkening as he absorbed the terms a clean division of our truly joint assets. Full and exclusive restoration of my premarital business interests. Joint custody of the twins with a generous support arrangement. And a non-disclosure agreement, preventing either of us from disparaging the other. This is absurd, he sputtered. You get everything. No, Josh, I get what was always mine, and we equitably divide what we built together. It's actually quite generous considering the documented financial misconduct and adultery. I'll fight this, he threatened. I'll take you to court. You could, I acknowledged. But then I'll be forced to submit all of this evidence, including the attempted corporate takeover through Philip Dawes, which potentially constitutes both legal malpractice and securities fraud. Are you prepared for those consequences to your career? Is Bianca? I watched the realization settle over him, the understanding that he had catastrophically underestimated me and was now cornered. You have 24 hours to consider the agreement, I said, gathering my things. I'll be staying at the Four Seasons until then. The twins are with my parents for the remainder of the week, giving us time to determine how we'll explain our separation to them. Josh stared at me, the man who thought he knew me finally seeing me clearly, perhaps for the first time in years. You planned all of this. How long have you known? Long enough to ensure I wasn't acting on emotion or incomplete information. I paused at the doorway. You taught me that. Actually. Never enter negotiations until you hold all the cards. One of the few pieces of professional advice you bothered to share with just a mom. The Hindsight Analytics Emergency Board meeting the next morning was brief but decisive. With Marcus's support and the comprehensive documentation I provided, Philip Dawes' motion was not merely defeated, but resulted in an official censure of his actions and a referral to the State Bar Association for ethical review. I addressed the board not as a returning exile, but as the chairperson who had never truly left. Gentlemen, ladies, we've weathered this attempt at corporate destabilization, but it highlights vulnerabilities in our governance structure that must be addressed. I'll be taking a more visible role in company leadership moving forward, while maintaining the work-life balance that has actually served our organization well, despite today's mischaracterization. The board responded with unanimous support, several members expressing embarrassment that they hadn't recognized the manipulation attempt sooner. Afterward, Victoria called with an update. Josh's attorney reached out. They want to discuss modifications to the settlement agreement. What modifications? I asked, already anticipating the answer. Primarily optics-related. Josh wants language that presents the separation as mutual and amicable. He's also requesting that the financial terms remain confidential. I considered this as my car navigated downtown Boston traffic. He's trying to protect his professional reputation. Exactly. No substantive changes to the division of assets or custody arrangement. Just narrative control. I can accommodate that. I decided. As long as the core agreement remains intact, the story we tell the world is negotiable. 26 hours after our confrontation, Josh signed the settlement agreement with only minor modifications. 72 hours after that, he moved out of our home and into a downtown apartment. Bianca Ramos, I later learned, had abruptly resigned from the firm and returned to Miami alone. The conversation with the twins about our separation was difficult, but honest, appropriate to their age, and focused on reassuring them of both parents' continued love and commitment to co-parenting. They adjusted with the resilience children often demonstrate when provided stability and consistency. 3 months later, I formally resumed a more visible leadership role at Hindsight Analytics while maintaining flexible hours that allowed me to remain present for the twins. The company announced an expansion into international markets, and our stock value increased 15% upon the news of my more active involvement. Josh and I settled into a civil co-parenting relationship. Whether motivated by genuine remorse or fear of further consequences, he adhered scrupulously to the custody arrangement and financial agreements. When we encountered each other at school functions or during custody exchanges, we maintained the polite fiction that our separation had indeed been mutual and amicable. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I received a text from Josh that defied our usual strictly practical communications about the twins. "You outplayed me completely. I deserved it, for what it's worth. I'm sorry." I considered ignoring it but ultimately decided on honesty. "It was never a game to me, Josh, just a marriage I thought was partnership rather than competition." His response came quickly. "I understand that now, too late, but I understand." I set down my phone and returned to reviewing architectural plans for Hindsight Analytics' new headquarters, a modern building designed with a state-of-the-art childcare facility on the ground floor and flexible workspaces that acknowledge the reality that professional ambition and family commitment could coexist rather than compete. The painful dissolution of my marriage had reinforced what I'd always known, but temporarily forgotten, while trying to accommodate Josh's increasingly narrow vision of our roles. True intelligence isn't about outmaneuvering others in zero-sum games, but about creating environments where different aspects of life can harmoniously coexist. That was the legacy I wanted to build for my company, for my children, and for myself. A world where women weren't forced to choose between being seen as brilliant or being seen as nurturing, where intelligence was recognized regardless of the package it came in, and where underestimation became a strategic advantage only for those foolish enough to judge a chess master by the apron she sometimes wore.